The accused arrives for hearing, under police escort. The morning sun filtered weakly through the gray clouds hovering over the city courthouse. A thick layer of tension loomed over the entire area, made heavier by the presence of heavily armed police officers, their eyes scanning the surroundings with suspicion. Barricades had been set up, and a crowd had already begun to gather, journalists, onlookers, and protesters. Everyone was waiting for the man who had haunted headlines for months. At exactly 9 a.m., the black armored police van pulled into the courthouse parking area. Sirens didn't blare, but its slow, deliberate arrival carried the weight of something significant. Inside the van sat a man whose name had become synonymous with terror, Rafiq Shah, a dangerous criminal accused of multiple murders, extortion, and links to an organized crime network. His court hearing had been postponed several times due to threats to his life and concerns over public safety. Two elite police commandos opened the van's doors and stepped out, their movements swift and rehearsed. Moments later, Rafiq emerged, hands cuffed, feet shackled, wearing a bulletproof vest over a simple white prison uniform. His face, though expressionless, carried the scars of violence and a cold calm that made people uneasy. As he stepped out, a wave of shouting surged from the gathered crowd. "Hang him!" someone screamed. "Murderer!" yelled another. Flashbulbs from cameras burst around him, but Rafiq didn't flinch. He walked with slow, measured steps, surrounded by a ring of officers who formed a moving wall of black and blue around him. It was a chilling sight, justice in motion, but with the constant shadow of danger. The courtroom itself was under tight surveillance. Metal detectors had been installed at all entry points, and only authorized personnel and pre-screened journalists were allowed inside. No mobile phones, no bags. Even the judge had requested enhanced security inside the courtroom. As Rafiq entered the courtroom, all eyes turned to him. His lawyers sat waiting near the defense bench, while the prosecution team, led by a senior state attorney, adjusted their papers and nodded grimly to one another. The judge, an elderly but sharp-minded woman with decades of experience, entered the room minutes later. A hush fell. But even in that secure space, something felt off, something tense and unsaid. The guards shifted uneasily. A small sound, perhaps a click, echoed from the gallery. And in the next moment, everything changed. Before anyone could react, a shot rang out from the public gallery. The courtroom erupted in chaos. Police officers tackled spectators, shielded the judge, and rushed toward Rafiq, who staggered backward, blood blooming across his chest. The accused had been shot, inside a courtroom, in front of the law, in front of the world. In seconds, the question of justice turned into a question of security, and the entire nation would soon be asking, how did this happen? The courtroom was silent, tense like the stillness before a thunderstorm. Everyone present could feel the weight of what was unfolding. One of the country's most feared criminals, Rafiq Shah, stood on trial for crimes that had horrified the nation. Dozens of armed officers were stationed in and around the hall, their eyes scanning every face, every corner. The hearing had just begun. Rafiq sat calmly, his face unreadable. He wore a bulletproof vest, but it seemed more symbolic than necessary. After all, no one was supposed to be armed inside a courtroom. Security had been watertight, or so everyone believed. The prosecutor was presenting evidence, a damning voice recording linking Rafiq to a recent murder. As the judge leaned forward to listen more closely, a subtle shift occurred in the gallery. Someone in the third row adjusted their seat. It was barely noticeable. No one paid attention. Then came a sound, so sharp and sudden it stole the breath from the room. Bang, a gunshot. The blast echoed like a thunderclap, and within seconds, chaos erupted. Rafiq jerked in his seat, eyes wide, a dark stain spreading across his chest. The bullet had pierced just above the edge of the vest. He gasped, his body slumping backward. Screams filled the courtroom. People ducked, scrambled, stumbled over benches. Officers rushed forward, weapons drawn. "Secure the judge!" one officer shouted. "Get the medics in here!" another yelled as they swarmed toward the front. The shooter, a man in a gray coat, was already trying to flee. But he didn't make it far. Two plainclothes officers tackled him to the ground. disarming him and pulling his hood back to reveal a middle-aged man with shaking hands and wild eyes. "Who is he?" Someone shouted. "Name's Kamran Farid," an officer muttered, checking the ID. "He lost his brother to Rafiq 2 years ago." The room fell into stunned silence, interrupted only by the groans of the dying man at the defense table. Paramedics rushed in, but it was too late. Rafiq Shah, once untouchable, once feared, was dead. News of the shooting spread like wildfire. Outside the courthouse, protesters erupted into cheers while others stood in shock. Questions immediately followed. How did Kamran get a gun inside? Was there help from someone on the inside? Was this justice or murder? The judge, pale and visibly shaken, recessed the court indefinitely. The trial had ended, not with a verdict, but with a bullet. Later, surveillance footage would reveal how Kamran had bypassed security through a court employee's ID, an inside job. The employee would be arrested, and a deep investigation would follow. But none of that changed what had already happened. Justice had been interrupted by vengeance. In a place where truth was meant to prevail, a gunman's act had rewritten the story, and the system, once shaken, would never be the same again. How did the killer get in? Who helped the courtroom, once a symbol of order, now lay drenched in the residue of chaos? Yellow tape sealed off the blood-stained floor. The air still hung heavy with shock, but outside, a different kind of urgency had taken over. An investigation was underway, and the central question echoed in every corridor of power. How did a man with a gun slip past layers of security? By evening, a joint task force had been formed, comprising officials from the judiciary, police, and internal security. Cameras from every hallway, checkpoint, and courtroom entrance were pulled for review. Officers interrogated dozens of court staff, security guards, and witnesses. Nothing could be left to assumption. The shooter, Kamran Farid, remained silent during the first few hours of questioning. He looked broken, haunted more than triumphant. But eventually, faced with undeniable evidence, he spoke. "He deserved to die," Kamran said flatly. "You called it a trial. I called it a mockery." His motive was clear: revenge. His brother, a local shopkeeper, had been killed in a gangland shootout linked to Rafiq Shah. The killer had never been convicted. Kamran had waited 2 years, but his access and execution suggested he hadn't acted alone. The breakthrough came when surveillance footage showed Kamran entering the side staff entrance, an area strictly off-limits to the public. He wasn't alone. A court employee, security badge in hand, walked beside him. The man was identified as Danish Iqbal, a junior clerk in the court's administrative office. He had no prior criminal record, no known political affiliations. Yet, when police raided his apartment later that night, they found documents, burner phones, and most damning, a copy of the courthouse floor plan with certain paths marked in red ink under interrogation. Danish broke. He revealed that Kamran had approached him months ago, posing not as a killer, but as a desperate brother seeking justice. They met repeatedly, quiet conversations over tea, talk of how justice had failed the common man. Gradually, Kamran's plan became clear. He wasn't just venting grief, he was preparing for vengeance. Danish admitted he had smuggled in a small firearm over the course of several weeks, piece by piece, hiding parts in maintenance tools and storage rooms. On the day of the hearing, he provided Kamran with an official ID badge, giving him backstage access, but why help him? "Maybe I believed him," Danish said. "Maybe I was just tired of watching the system protect monsters." The fallout was swift. Multiple court employees were suspended pending review. Top police officials were summoned to explain the security lapses. The Chief Justice demanded a full audit of courtroom protocols nationwide. Talk shows erupted in debates. Was Kamran a criminal or a hero? But beneath all the noise, a quiet truth remained. The very walls built to uphold justice had been used to undermine it. And as the investigation deepened, one question still lingered. Was Kamran truly acting alone? Or was this only the beginning of something far more dangerous?